What's good, y'all? My name is Dylan Green, and this is Real Notes, a space dedicated to blurring the cultural and artistic lines between rap and film. I'm here to chop it up with everyone from rappers and producers to journalists and video directors about their relationship to movies and how, if at all, film inspires their craft. My guest this week is writer, activist, and community organizer Clarissa Brooks. We spoke about their love of Gossip Girl, third-person narration, the work of Toni Morrison and Zora Neale Hurston, seeing Grave of the Fireflies in high school, how their work as an organizer influences their work as a writer, the legacy of Odd Future, DaBaby's public image, and a handful of pieces they've written for outlets from Dead End Hip Hop and DJBooth to Nylon and The Cut. Come fuck with us. Hi, everybody. What's cracking? Welcome back. This is number 19. Yeah, we're almost at 20. Jesus Christ. So yeah, this is number 19, Real Notes. Dylan, CineMasai. I got some names. Those are two of them. This is my podcast. Welcome back. I don't know why I'm talking like this right now. I got somebody really fucking dope on here. As we all know, every nigga that comes on here is super tight, but this nigga in particular is the best. We got Clarissa Brooks in the place to be, writer, organizer, all around super awesome, dope, tight person. So Clarissa, thank you for coming on my shit. I really, really appreciate you.
Oh my goodness, thank you for having me. I feel like I'm just, like getting drinks with an old friend from college. So this is easy.
And see that this is good vibes. It's all about good vibes and important convos to the point where we don't want to throw up after. That's always the goal.
As long as everyone calls their Uber home safely.
or like manages to walk the like 15 blocks if they don't want to pay for it, because like sometimes we're on that type of time.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta eat a shitty slice of pizza and take it to the
When was the last time you were up in New York and you went and got yourself some shitty Two Bros pizza and like walked back to an apartment somewhere?
I've only been to New York one time in my life.
Oh man, I didn't even realize.
Been in the South. Yeah, but I've been in the South all of my life. I went one time in 2018 and I literally just stayed in the hotel most of it. It was a cool time. I was actually supposed to go to Brooklyn this weekend, but I canceled it just because like family stuff. I just I need to be closer. Right. But a part of me is like, maybe I do need to just cause some chaos in Brooklyn, pop up on some people.
I mean, I mean, like this is the year to do it. Honestly, like this is the year to do that. Like it just I don't want to say we're free or that we're in post-COVID because we're obviously not in either of those things. But like we're all just like desperate to connect in some way. So, if you're going to do it, it's just like Yo's been trying to get me to come down to Atlanta and
goodness, yeah.
Yo, I want that to happen. We'll see if I can make it happen. But, that's just like we all want to see each other and chaos is cool sometimes. So
yeah, I mean, if I went on a rant about my love and hate for Yosifer, it'd be a 3-hour conversation. And text me at random 3:00 in the morning. Trying to go to Edgewood? No, yo, it's 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Go to bed.
He doesn't know what bed is, bro.
He doesn't. And every time we hang out, he thinks it's about to be fun. And I'm like, yeah, we can have fun. Also, are you eating a vegetable? Are you sleeping? Yo. He doesn't answer those questions.
You gotta check in on him sometimes. Yeah, he and I were running around a bunch in Tulsa, and like he's active, man. Like people don't get that about him, but he's active as shit.
Literally, and that's my favorite part. Like he really does not tell people what he does, and I genuinely, as his friend, don't know what he does. He'd be like, "Yeah," I'll be like, "Oh, you trying to hang out this weekend?" He's like, "Oh, I'm in LA till next week." When did you go? Whatever. But yes, very, very Gemini Capricorn like.
Oh, facts.
His birth chart is wild. The wildest birth chart I've ever seen. Oh my! He was like, I don't know what this means. I was like, it's better that you don't.
Yeah, because you'd have to stand back and start thinking about some stuff. Like,
yes.
That's hilarious. Shout out to our chaotic bestie, yo. So let me start this off by asking you what I ask everybody who comes on here. What was the last movie or TV show that you watched that you had a strong opinion about?
This is okay. This is important because one, I just had some roommates who were staying with me. They are thankfully gone. But when they left, they took their PlayStation, so I couldn't watch TV for like the past week. And so I just got an HDMI cord and a remote finally, like a few days ago. But I watched the Gossip Girl reboot.
How is it?
Garbage. I literally, and like, I'm not like, my partner is somebody that feels really deeply about cinema. Like they love movies, they love watching movies and like having, especially like Spike Lee, like they can talk about Spike Lee all day long. But
Right.
I'm not as intent on it. I don't watch movies super, super heavy. I have ones that I love, and a lot of it is like just related to like movies that were important to me growing up. But Gossip Girl was critical to my childhood. So I watched the reboot. It's garbage. The fashion sucks. The storyline
Oh.
sucks. And we were like, okay, so we watched the reboot and then we were like, let's watch the original first pilot just to like make sure we're not gassing how bad this is.
Right.
It's just garbage. Like the pilot is so well constructed, so well written. They give you like it's the perfect like Toni Morrison says it all the time of like, I'm gonna open this book with like giving you everything you need to know in the first 5 to 10 pages. And your goal as a reader is to stick along and find out what's really happening. And that's what the pilot of Gossip Girl does. Like, it's the perfect sequence of that. There's conflict, there's tension, it rises, there's beef you don't understand. The pilot of Gossip Girl is confusing, weird. The dynamics are never explained or even made sense of. There's drug use, but like, why are you doing ecstasy at 7:30 p.m.? Like it doesn't make, it's like trying to be Skins and Gossip Girl at the same time.
Ooh,
and it's just,
okay.
It's bad because Gossip Girl is very like top 1% and Skins is not that at all.
Yeah.
So it's clearly I have a passion about it, but it's not a good reboot.
That's cold. Cause yeah, like, cause like I know a lot of the early conversation was around like the fact that they weren't gonna like they weren't gonna focus as much on their money and the glamour, which is like, why remake Gossip Girl if you're not gonna do that? Cause like that's the whole point of the shit.
Right. And also I think that choice was around like, it's 2021, like the actual 1% don't look like they're the 1%.
Right.
Because they know that we're moving towards a more like more anti-capitalist, like you gonna get robbed if you actually look like Blair Waldorf, right?
Oh, facts. Yeah.
But even in the reboot, you don't actually get that sense. It's just kind of like the things it's kind of like anytime I get edits back and an editor's like, you need to explain this. Like you're assuming the reader knows what you're talking about, and they don't. And a lot of the reboot really feels like they expect us to know what they're talking about, and we don't have that context because it's a completely different world. Yeah, it's just bad.
Damn. So real quick before we move on, talk to me a little bit about like your relationship with Gossip Girl and like when you first saw it and like what effect it's had on you and like with your like general like movie TV watching experience.
Yeah, so I mean, so I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I literally, the most exciting part of my childhood was like, my mom was like, if you get straight A's, I'll get you cable TV. That never happened. Never happened.
Damn.
And that's just on like growing up poor, right? We just like didn't have that access. So a lot of the TV I watched was very Black growing up. And then in like elementary school, so like Jamie Foxx show, I was heavy on UPN. Growing up a little bit more, and also my mom would just send me to Barnes and Nobles for fun. So I would be reading Pretty Little Liars, Gossip Girl, those type of like teen series. Pretty often as a kid. So once the TV shows came out, they were really central to my understanding of femininity and beauty, and a lot of shit I had to unpack later. But Gossip Girl was critical because it was the first time where I understood third person narrator. And I really, really love third person narration in anything. Like being in English classes growing up, I'd always be like, if I can write something in third person, I want to. So Gossip Girl was the perfect place to be like,
Interesting.
There's an outside voice who's deciding everything. I also grew up on Veronica Mars, like Kristen Bell, her politics aside, we stand her over here. So Veronica Mars was important. Hearing her on Gossip Girl, I was like, this is it for me. And also, I think there was just a level of when you're a tween 12, 13-year-old and you're watching a bunch of grown white women do drugs and be mean to each other, you're just like, I want to be grown. I want to be fighting with my bestie on the stairs of some library, which is not realistic to my life, but it really did help me understand what the mass culture's ideas of femininity were, in a way that even though I know it's actually not beneficial to me, there's small pockets that I still really love about Gossip Girl, that I think are, still really central to how we understand womanhood, even if we try to act like we don't on some feminist tip.
That's so much that you just said right there. And I want, no, it's all good. I just wanted to start with the fact that like, that was kind of my relationship with Bad Girls Club. Cause like my sister and I would watch Bad Girls Club when like season 4 was my favorite. And I didn't really have much of a relationship with Gossip Girl like that. I had a lot of friends who did, but I didn't watch it like that. But like Bad Girls Club was where I was like, okay, I get this now. This is me watching everything that you just said and being like, I'm here for the mess. Like this is that was when I was like just fully embraced. Like I love this mess. Like,
you know? And it's wild because like I got on Bad Girls Club in college, but actually Bad Girls Club made much more sense to my reality as a kid than Gossip Girl. But Gossip Girl was like the complete opposite of what I was living. So I was like, this works. But anytime I watch Bad Girls Club, I'm like, I don't think you can end an episode and be like, who doesn't want to fight? Like, right. I'm ready to go. Like, it's such a good show. I mean, not the ethics of it, but
right, yeah, you know, like it just like elicits a really specific mood. Like you're like it's like one of 3 moods. You're either gonna be ready to fight, you're gonna be ready to party, or you're gonna be ready to fuck. Like one of those 3 things. Like
yeah, and it's wild. Like now that I'm getting a bit older, I always am thinking about like, damn, the producers of this show really did what they needed to do. Like as I watch more like reality TV, like, and you can notice like the music being put in, the clips, the cuts they're putting in. And now I'm just like, okay, I see what y'all are doing to elicit an emotion out of me, and it's working.
Right. Yeah. Nah. Like yeah. Like you can see the puppet strings, but it's like fuck it. You know. Like it's you're just here.
Right.
Yeah, on some Dr. Manhattan shit. But there's another bit I wanted to touch on. You talked about the third person narration, which is something that like a lot of people consider narration to be taboo in like TV and film. I don't necessarily. Like I'm a proponent of like if you manage to make it work, you can do anything. I don't care what it is. And but like it's really, there's just like this stigma that like people feel like narration is lazy, and people feel like it's like I don't necessarily agree with that, but like the general consensus is like it's lazy and people only use it because they can't figure out how to tell a good story or whatever the fuck. So like talk to me about what that narration kind of showed you, and like if you could, well, this might be a bit of a stretch, but like is there like some sort of connection to the way that you write through that fascination with third person narration?
Yeah, I think some of my favorite books growing up involved a narrator, and maybe not even, well, third person narration being Gossip Girl, but also just like internal dialogue felt really important in books. Like even like Junie B. Jones, like you are hearing her world and also she's telling you what she's thinking. And the queen of that, Toni Morrison.
Yeah.
Toni Morrison is the queen of a internal dialogue and narration, and goes between those seamlessly all the time, and in terrifying ways. Like when I read Toni Morrison sentences, I'm just like, let's fight.
Yeah, honestly.
But with Gossip Girl, something that I always felt was critical, and maybe it is like justice oriented, was like, what's your side of the story, the other person's side of the story, and like the truth that's in the middle. And I think for me, that narration piece does that. even with Gossip Girl, she doesn't actually like really tell the truth, but she says the things that the characters are afraid to say or deal with. And really moves the dialogue in a way that the characters aren't really doing, or just that they're just like not as aware of. Like even watching the pilot, Gossip Girl is like asking questions like, what is Serena back for? Why is she hanging out with Nate? Very small things that like you don't catch. And it's funny because I didn't know that Dan Humphries was Gossip Girl until recently, like a few years ago. But now that I watched the pilot, I'm just like, dude is everywhere. He's coming home late. He's literally everywhere. And I did not catch that until I watched the pilot yesterday. But yeah, I think narration and internal dialogue are really important. And it also frames how I write. I know there've been, I wrote an investigative piece on Alexis Crawford, and the original copy I turned in is narration, reporting, narration, and then reporting. And my editor was like, wow, this is beautiful. Not what I asked for, but beautiful. And so she was like, I want you to keep the narration copy because it's beautiful stuff. But, you know, it was a lesson in investigative reporting where it's like, you can't have that. You actually have to let your reporting lead the story. And your reporting has to be strong enough to do that work by itself. So that's a skill I'm always kind of unlearning with like more hard journalism stuff, because hard journalism just is a little dry for me.
Yeah, I feel it.
And I always want to add a elusive, descriptive narration. And editors are like, wow, thank you for none of this. But yeah, I feel like it's still pretty critical in how I understand how I want to tell stories still.
Right. You know who else is incredible at that? Zora Neale Hurston. She's incredible at that too. Like I was I just pretty recently I read this big collection of like lost short stories that she wrote about her time in New York. And like she's so incredible at putting you into a character's head like through that narration. And like I'm looking at these stories and I'm like, this wouldn't make sense if we didn't know what was going on in this person's head, you know, like and you know, like I think it's like I guess it's kind of different between film and TV and literature, the way narration works, but I don't necessarily feel it's right to just say straight out like, oh, it's just lazy. Like it can be done lazy, but I don't think like the act of utilizing narration is inherently lazy. Like I think that's kind of reductive.
Yeah. Ooh, I was just thinking about another, like cinema wise. My favorite movie that me and my best friend Christine watch is Gone Girl. Another beautiful piece of narration where her internal, and also like where you actually, I haven't read the book, so I don't know if it's different, but in the movie itself, the actual break starts in the middle of the movie.
Right. Yeah.
You actually don't get the narration until we catch her running away from the house.
Yep.
And
changing her identity and shit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that felt
Great
like
movie.
a really critical narration because we're actually unsure. And we're also like kind of, as the author does, like gives us these points of like, he's not that great of a husband. He's actually kind of shit and not actually a villain, but he's just unaware, selfish, checked out.
He's a dope. Yeah, exactly. He's a dope.
Completely unaware. And to where like, even when I finished the movie the first time, I wasn't clear if he hit her or not still.
Right.
And
yeah.
So I really thought about it. And I was like, but that, I mean, I think that is one of my favorite parts with narration is like, because you're being led a certain way, you also have to take the responsibility as the person watching it or reading it to be like, do I trust this narration? And by the end of it, you actually realize that wasn't the full truth of what happened.
Right. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, like Amy in a sense is kind of like an unreliable narrator because she's as I mean as much as we're brought to sympathize with her and like as much sympathy as I feel like she deserves to an extent, obviously. Like I never really thought about the fact that like she's kind of like, I guess I just never thought about the narration in the sense that like she's kind of just an unreliable narrator, and
Yeah.
that movie, it's really interesting you bring that up because that movie is so built on performance. Like Ben
Mhm.
Affleck is performing what he thinks is like the good husband and he's doing shit on the side. Amy is a full-on sociopath and
Oh
like
my goodness.
performing everything, and like of course that comes down to what society puts on her as a woman.
Yeah.
Like the fact that she has to perform, like she mentions that in the narration when she's doing the thing, like
Mhm.
it's just about what society imposes on women for them to perform like this. It's all
Yeah.
about these different masks that we put on and these different acts that we put on in front of people depending on who we, it's just like that wouldn't come through without the narration.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah. Because without it, she would just be a woman that gets kidnapped by her like unstable ex.
yeah, and also that whole section of the movie would just like her getting ready with like no dialogue underneath it, and that's like that could be fire sometimes but not like the narration helps there. It
Yeah.
helps there. It feels
Yeah.
really crucial.
I think the last movie I want to mention is it The Lost Bones? It's about a white girl who gets killed.
The Lovely Bones.
The Lovely Bones. Absolutely. Clearly, I have a thing for white women getting killed in narration. But The Lovely Bones was another, damn, I really do have a thing for white women dying in narration. Because I was also going to say, My Sister's Keeper was one of my favorite books growing up.
Wow.
Jodi Picoult knows how to write a fucking book. That woman knows how to give you narration and also from different characters' perspectives. That I think is one of my favorite ways of writing a book, of like each chapter is one a different font, a different character, but she's still keeping the timeline.
Right.
Yeah, clearly, I have a problem with narration. So when I do put out a book and it's narrated, like, don't. This is your warning.
Yeah, no. I won't say shit. I can't promise anybody else, but I won't say shit about it.
Yeah.
What's the first movie experience you can remember having? Like it could be at the theater, it could be at your cousin's house, it could be like in a mall watching a movie on a TV or something. Like what's the first movie experience you remember having?
I feel like a lot of it is influenced by my mom. My mom really made it really clear to me that like there were certain movies that really mattered to her, and that was The King and I,
Uh-huh.
Sound of Music, and The Preacher's Wife.
Oh, wow. That's a really interesting trifecta. Wow.
Right. And it covers a lot, but I think those are really important to me just because The Preacher's Wife is unstoppable. Like Whitney Houston, Denzel Washington, it's just disrespectful how good that soundtrack is.
Yeah.
Like so good.
That was a big part of my childhood too. I love that movie.
Yeah, and it's like, and I don't like Christmas as a holiday, but I love The Preacher's Wife. Like that is the one movie I will watch. So those are really critical to me watching growing up. The Sound of Music, because my mom really loves musicals, King and I as well. And I still hold really dear to that. Also, like every Easter, my mom would watch the Moses replay that happens on ABC.
The Ten Commandments.
The Ten Commandments, yeah.
Damn, that shit is like 4 hours long.
Right. And I would watch it every single Easter, acting as if I didn't know what would happen. And yeah, I think in person, like cinema things, the first movie premiere that I went to with like my family and friends was, I think You Got Served.
Ooh, wow, that's a good first one, honestly. Like
Yeah,
that's such
and
a
like opening weekend, like it was like a huge deal to us. And then from there, I, got into middle school, got super heavy into Harry Potter. So a lot of my really big cinema moments are going to go see Harry Potter. I remember watching part 2 of the Deathly Hallows, like on the seats of the cinema stairs because the theater was so packed.
damn.
Like we were like just me and my white friends were like, we refuse to leave. And we just like sat on the stairs in the dark, watching it. So a lot of it's around series and movies. I don't I'm not a scary movie person.
I get
Like
it.
scary enough. I saw Hereditary and I saw Midsommar.
I, wow. So to not be a horror movie person and see those two, what was that like?
I had nightmares for weeks. And I was, and
Wow.
there's a reason why my mom didn't let me watch scary movies. One, because like people in my family also are deep into spirituality.
Right.
And I don't think I'm as heavy into it, but like I don't think none of that's not possible. So as a kid, I didn't have that filter of this is fake. Um, so I definitely like was a kid that was like, gotta keep the lights on when I go to sleep. Um, and I don't think I am that way still, but I'm just like, I'm not trying to mess with no nothing. So when I saw Hereditary on accident because my roommates at the time were watching it, terrible idea. I watched Midsommar because people told me it was a thriller. It's not.
They lied.
Lied to me.
Straight cap. Oh my god.
Like completely lied to me. But I also am somebody that just like really loves different ways of doing a genre. So to see Midsommar and to see the way that it's shot and filmed and just the lighting of it was really cool. But I also couldn't sleep. Like I saw Hereditary and my part of my partner's room is like in an attic. And I was like, I can't go up here. Like we saw Hereditary. I'm not going up here. I think I'm fuck.
Right.
But yeah, so scary movies are not for me. I do love thrillers. I do love like the Gone Girl types, like really a lot of like more true crime type stuff. But I saw Freddy versus Jason when I was a little kid and it still haunts me. So
You saw you saw Kelly Rowland get smacked into a tree by Jason and shit. Like,
and there was also so much sex in that. I was like, I think as a kid, I
yeah.
was like, why is there so much sex in this scary movie? Like, who is enjoying this? I was like, who wants sex in their scary movie?
I mean, a lot of people do. It's kind of like a staple. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it like I don't know why it happened, but I feel like maybe it didn't start with Friday the 13th, but I think that's when people started to notice it, like
Yeah.
because then Scream happens, and Scream is like they're just like if you have sex in a scary movie, you will die, period. And
Yeah.
like it just became like this like accepted, like there's gonna be sex in your horror movie, like especially your slasher horror movie, like
Yeah. Which goes into a whole thing about other things, but
right, yeah.
but those are the movies that were really critical to me. And I will say I think as I got a bit older, I wasn't as heavy into movies. I really am somebody that will like go to the same films over and over again. I have no problem rewatching something.
Yeah.
But I definitely am a child of the internet and also like UPN, all of the like Black sitcoms that were happening in the early like 2000s, because that's what I like grew up on.
Felt. Before we move on, I was just thinking about this. I don't know if anybody else remembers this, but you ever watch a show called Waynehead before? It was an animated show about a black kid with a club foot. It aired on Cartoon Network for like a handful of years, and it had a crazy good theme song.
I remember the image of this, but I never watched it.
Man.
Oh yeah, I definitely remember this.
It's
Definitely.
like,
yeah,
it's just one of those things. It's just like buried in the back of my head. Like I think that was probably one of the earliest examples I could think of like seeing a black character in a cartoon, and me being like, huh, that's pretty cool. Like that, and like the black kid on Recess, like just being like, wow, like it's tight. It's cool seeing that. And I don't know why I thought about that, because it has nothing to do with UPN, but shout out to UPN because the programming was extra good.
So good. There's also like a lot of history on like the company and stuff and why the show's left. But Wayne's Head, it makes me think about I don't know, whoever is going to interview Andre 3000. I don't know if it's possible, but I will give him money to make Class of 3000.
Oh man, yeah,
just
like one more season.
I just need one more season of Class 3000. The music is so good, and I wasn't even like around to watch it, but like an old partner of mine mentioned it to me, and I started watching it, and I was like, "This is too good. Like this man is too talented. Like we need this to come back.
Yeah, you want to talk about unstoppable? Like Andre 3000 has done it all, and yeah, Class of 3000 was a lot of fun. I haven't watched it since it first aired, but I remember loving it, and like the music was always so good, and like, damn,
It's gotta come
nah,
back.
yo, Dre, if you're listening,
Come on.
come talk to me. We'll make this happen.
We will start the petition. Just give us one last season, please.
Man. Oh, so so I guess like, you know, like as you're growing up with UPN, which was growing up with UPN and all the movies that you just mentioned, like was there like, is there a specific movie or like a specific show or whatever that like made you fall in love with cinema as like a concept and be like, this is like was there anything that took you beyond just like watching it as a person and like appreciating it as art?
Yeah. Damn, we're about to make a real deep pivot here. So in Charlotte, there's like magnet schools. So they have like arts programs, language programs. I was in the language program. I like studied Spanish for like 12 years, the whole thing. But at my middle school, they had Spanish, French, German, Japanese, and Mandarin. And I took Japanese class for 3 years. I can barely understand any of it still. But the first film that made me actually think really critically about cinema was in my Japanese class. Of course, I had a white Japanese teacher, a white man with an obsession. But we watched Grave of Fireflies.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It is the darkest anime movie. I'm not someone that cries at movies at all. I'm not a crier in general, but specifically with movies, I'm the last person that's gonna cry. I remember weeping when I saw Grave of Fireflies because I was like, one, this is the darkest film about World War II I've ever seen. And two, like it doesn't let up. It doesn't get better at all. It ends darkly, it begins dark. But it was the first time that I felt like I was getting like a really honest first person experience of Japanese wartime that wasn't coming through like a US filter, and made me actually think about like what my like reality as a Black person in the US was to other countries. And also it's just a gorgeous movie. It's just a gorgeous anime. And I think from there, I didn't get into anime from there, but it was the first time where I was like, okay, I'm watching things and feeling really intensely about how I understand like the music and the lighting and the storytelling. Because I think Grave of Firefly starts with him like in the subway and it ends with him in the subway too, after his sister passes. So yeah, it was again one of those things where the storytelling really kind of comes full circle in a way that you think there's a light, but like it doesn't actually, it ends on a very like somber note of like, this is just this person's story, in a way that I just thought was really, really honest as like a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Man, like studio, like, you know, like first and foremost, Studio Ghibli is just like they're gonna knock it out of the park every time. That one wasn't Hayao Miyazaki, but it was somebody else within his camp who did that, and like it's like it's a really beautifully done movie, but like you said, it's like horrifyingly sad. Like that shit really I like it honestly fucks me up to this day. Like like just like him, just like watching the older brother just like be with his kid brother when he died. Nah.
When I tell you, when I think back on it, it really is not an age appropriate movie to show middle schoolers. Because when I tell you, we were wrecked as a class, like 6th to 8th graders, we all left crying. And my teacher, of course, this very obsessed white man was like, all right, and that's the reality of World War II. It was honest, but like, it is one of the darkest movies I've ever seen. And I'm always like, you trying to cry? It's right there.
Yeah, you know, throw on Grave of the Fireflies. And like that movie is so important to not just people's understanding of Japan in the World War II era, but like to like the history of anime in particular, because like anime arose from the ashes of everything that happened in World War II. Like the industry kind of started like, oh, I wish I could remember the full story off top, but like the history of anime really like started to kick into high gear once World War II happened and Japan was starting to rebuild itself after the bombs dropped. And like and like a lot of its earlier, from what I understand, a lot of its earlier technology driven stuff was really like like a lot of it was based in the fantasy of like, oh, this is what we want right now, but we don't have that because we have like next to nothing.
Yeah.
And I guess this is the first time I'm gonna say this. I guess I'm gonna post a link to a to this really great piece that explains this history in a much better way than I can. But I think Grave of the Fireflies is such an explicit like connection to that, or maybe not a connection to it, but like a springboard to that, to like understanding, or to at least like piquing the curiosity of like, oh, where did this come from? Like it kind of started here. So like I guess it's just like serendipity to see that come around, on top of it being just like a sad thing that you and your homegirls are crying about after you watch it in school. Like,
yeah, I mean, and we got a little bit of the anime context, and we watched a lot of anime in that class. It's still one of my favorite classes from middle school, but and like we watched Totoro, all those things. And the tones are just so different. Like you can see what houses are making certain things, because you can also like feel when it's made for a US audience and when it's not.
oh yeah.
And Grave of the Fireflies is not for the US audience.
But yeah, before we move on, I was just reading this piece that I was talking about, and there's so like just like a little bit more context about like Japan and animation during the World War II era. Like there was a lot of propaganda animation going on at the time, but of course, like the war kind of decimated the animation industry, and a lot of people felt that like people weren't investing money into it the way it needed to be. And then like there were still people making animation, but it was like just a lot more scarce. And then Astro Boy happened in the, I want to say like, yeah, like the early 60s. And Astro Boy, like especially with the whole technological aspect, like that was kind of like a really big moment for that industry. And like Astro Boy kind of pushed this general understanding of what the West considers anime to be. And yeah, I just think all that's really interesting, especially when you consider like what Grave of the Fireflies is about, like as kind of being like the prelude to that. So yeah, I think that's tight.
Yeah.
So let's go in a slightly different direction. When did you first fall in love with music growing up? Like while all of this is happening?
Mm-hmm. I think that happened on Tumblr. Yeah, it happened on Tumblr. And I'll say namely with like certain artists. I mean, MIA politically is in a different place now. But MIA in high school for me was so critical to really my understanding of like internationalism and like the diaspora. And she wasn't the only person. Like I was listening to Cakes the Killer.
Shout out to Cakes, Jersey's finest.
Leaf as well. Listening to Skepta. Like I was like, Tumblr was the place where I was able to listen outside of the US South in a way that felt like just like new and fresh to me. And I kind of like in a weird way kind of worked my way backwards, like kind of ran through like what artists in the UK were listening to and playing, and then kind of made my way back to New York hip hop and the origins of that. So when a lot of times when people ask me like my top 5 or like my feelings on like Jay-Z and Nas, I'm just like, you're asking a Southern kid who was born in 95 about Nas. And I don't have the context for you. And also like, right. I respect the history. I know the history, but also like, I'm not about to debate with you about Nas and Jay-Z. I'm just not, I just don't have it for you. But yeah, I would say Tumblr is a place where I like grew that love. That's when I started like copying songs, converting them on like YouTube converters, adding them to my Apple Music history playlist. And I will say Tumblr was a place where I was like, I definitely want to be a DJ. Right? There was this like a DJ and a dancer. So I was really, really deep into like hip hop dance. I used to intern at this place called Collective Youth in Charlotte, run by Andrea Lewis. No, not Andrea Lewis. I'm forgetting her last name, but an icon in like hip hop choreography. And yeah, it was like, I'm gonna be a DJ or a dancer. I realized being a DJ is super expensive. Also realized being a dancer is super expensive. So I was like, something's gotta give. What's in the middle space where I can talk my shit? And then I found writing. Because being a DJ was like, yeah, just like too much equipment, but like being a writer, I was able to like listen to music and give my opinion. And yeah, that's how I started at Dead in Hip Hop.
Right. Yeah. I'm happy you already went there, because I was gonna ask when you decided that you wanted to be a writer. Like, was there like a specific song or like a specific moment where you were like, I'm a write now? Like, do you have one of those?
I didn't start off wanting to be a music writer. I actually started off, just a weird kid my mother had. I was just thinking about it. I wanted to be a lot of things growing up, right? Like I wanted to also be a fashion designer really badly. Arts was like the only way for me, but I got really deep into fashion writing. I still have like every Vogue from like 2012 to 2015.
Wow.
Yeah, super deep into fashion writing. So at some point, I still want to get there, but I also know fashion writing is so elitist and expensive, which is why I kind of merged onto music writing. But actually, the first thing that I was like, I need to write about this was, what is my first byline? I don't know if I remember. The first thing I can remember writing, not writing about, but like writing and getting a response on, was actually Telephone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I wrote a review of Telephone for Dead End Hip Hop and No Name, because I gave it like a B-. And No Name replied and was like, a B-? And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that storyline has grown from there. But
right.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever got any artist response from anything I ever wrote. So I was just super hyped, super excited to like even get that. Very fangirl type of way. But yeah, Telephone was the first thing I was like, I'm proud that I wrote this and really spent my time with it. I'm gonna go see what my first piece was though, because that could be.
Yeah, no, I'm curious now. And yeah, like while we're here, like, yeah, obviously, like you just did the No Name Books the stream over the weekend, which I only got to see part of. But like y'all held it down. Like, shout out to you and shout out to everything that No Name has been doing with the book club. Like, I have Asada Shakur's autobiography like right here that I haven't started, like specifically because of that. Because I have like 5 other books I'm reading right now. But yeah, no, like shout out to No Name and everything she and her organizations have been up to, because it's been super dope. Also, she's I want a whole No Name and Madlib album. I don't know if anybody's talked about this yet, but I want that. I don't know if she wants it. I don't know if he wants it. I want that.
The people want it. Okay, I checked my Contently page, which is not completely there, but I wrote my first music thing. I wrote about the 2017 XXL cover.
Right.
And then I wrote about the Damn album by Kendrick.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like the most, I think those are the last like Dead End pieces I have that are available. But yeah, 2017 XXL cover and Kendrick were like the first couple public pieces I have.
Got you.
Yeah.
So also like of course you don't just write about music, you write about all sorts of different things, but you're also a community organizer, and you've been doing that for years. So like when did that aspect start to first come into your life? Like what really put you in the space of wanting to work as a community organizer?
Yeah. So I was writing before becoming an organizer. I was doing that in high school. There's like a profile of me by the Charlotte Mecklenburg school system. It's like student journalist. I the outfit I have on in that picture is wild. But yeah, have always been writing for a long time. I got to college and got into organizing through the organization I was a part of at the time called AUC Shut It Down. And it kind of just went on from there. And really by accident, it was more like the things that were happening on campus weren't being reported on. And I was really just like, somebody's got to do it. I write, I need to find a way to do it. And I truly like tell like my origin story of getting into freelance writing. Because one, I know luck is a huge part of like how things happen. And also to say like, when people are like, I want you to mentor me and I want you to this, I'm just like, one, a part of this story is luck. And two, the other part is like a deep knowledge and want to be a better writer that like nobody made me do. Like I really take the time to really do that work on my own. But all that to say, I emailed Allison Maloney, who was like, I want to say one of the people that critically shifted Teen Vogue's political coverage. Like you can't talk about Teen Vogue becoming political without Allison. But I sent her a pitch and she replied. And I literally remember like where I was going on campus. I was a sophomore. Like what I was doing when she replied and me being like, fuck, I gotta, and that's genuinely still my response to when editors reply to me for things that like, I know I gotta do. I'm just like, all right, bitch, you said you're gonna do it, so now you gotta do it.
Yeah.
And it's always a little like exciting, but like really like you gotta prove yourself. And I hold myself to a really high standard with my writing. So thankfully my first edits with her were not hard. She was like, this is pretty solid. And as a sophomore in college, I was hype about that. So that's really where my organizing and writing started to merge. And my work as a paid organizer happened a little bit more after college, towards the last couple of years, working for like Color of Change and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of really how it started. And from there, I've kind of been able to meet other journalists who call themselves movement journalists who like, yeah, hold a particular politic that I'm really proud to be a part of.
Yeah, that's incredible, honestly, because like it's like you've been like you're one of a handful of writers I know who have like, I mean, like you clearly have like the thing that you're into, like you have your beat, but you've kind of just been all over the place. Like you've written about music, you've written about organizing, you've written about HBCUs, you've written about so many different things in so many different ways, and like that's like I just think that's something that really needs to be noted because it's like it's hard enough writing about one kind of thing. But like like it's for you, it's just like you do op-eds, you do like hard news reporting when you need to, like and then like you mix it in with the narration sometimes, like it's like that's tough, and that's just, yeah, I just think that's dope. And you've managed to turn it into something really really like sustaining, and like you've got this following, and like you're and like not even the fact that you just have a following, like you're really like you're very genuine in what you do, and that comes through in your writing and the work you do. So
yeah, I think that's like always the goal with my work. And I will say a lot of the like wide range of coverage is, I'm not even gonna say on accident, but like even like in talking about the nuances of like of how I grew up and how we all understand cinema and music, like if somebody said just write about Black music, it just wouldn't make sense, because my understanding of music covers so many grounds, and even like liberation politics and all those things. So yeah, I think about like the Haley Williams coverage I've done, and for a lot of people, they're just like, that's pretty left field, but also like the geopolitical world I live in the South, growing up as a like poor Black kid, but going to like magnet programs with upper middle class white people and brown people. This is not that much of a stretch for me. Right. Yeah, but it's like Black people in context is a lot more complicated than the white imagination. It's like, you wouldn't listen to this. And it's like,
you don't know that.
Right. And also like my reality is that I was bused with like all Black and brown kids, and we were all listening to Paramore, all listening to Green Day. And I was listening to that with the Black kids too, right? Like this is like, and I think Hanif actually talks about this a lot more of code switching and like the different realities you have to be in as a Black person in different spaces.
Totally.
And that just feels like really resonant to how I grew up. I grew up around a lot of white kids, but my family is like, yeah, completely different. Like all dark-skinned folks, all like geniuses on Southern rap and culture. And I grew up in both places, so I have an appreciation for both of those things, but that doesn't make one of those experiences any less than the other for me.
Totally. Yeah. No, I relate 100% because I grew up the same way. Like we were all listening to Paramore and Green Day. I was playing Tony Hawk games and getting into all of that music. Like that's how I first, like that was some of my first exposure to like metal, and like I'm still really into metal now. Like I really got into metal when I was in college, like through like through like older bands like Meshuggah, and like got into like prog rock like Coheed and fucking like Animals as Leaders and all that shit. And you know, like, like we both grew up in we both grew up at a time and in areas where we know that like Black people listen to everything. Like, like like I know some of the hoodest people you could possibly imagine who are banging Paramore and Green Day.
Absolutely.
Like it's big facts, like we're not a monolith in that way. Like of course like pretty much every Black person I know loves rap, but there's always more to it than that. Like me and all my homeboys were listening to Lupe and Kanye, but we were also listening to Green Day and Tool and like all that stuff, and like that exists. And that's why you getting to interview Haley Williams was such a big moment, because I could tell that you were the exact same way. And I was like, damn, like I see you out here like really putting on for that, because like that type of person has always existed. It didn't just happen with you, like, and of course you know that, and I'm not like telling you that, but like that's just dope. I just loved to see that. It's just yeah.
And I feel like Hanif is like one of the OGs that really led that charge. Like I think Hanif is one of the first people I saw like doing hip hop coverage, doing rock coverage, doing pop coverage. Because I was even thinking about like my mom has such a wide range of music and cinema interests. Like one of my mom's favorite movies, she's got a weird J-Lo fascination, but have you seen Made in Manhattan?
Of course I have. I knew you were going to say Made in Manhattan. I knew you were going to say.
God damn it. My mom loves herself. Made to Riches story, which I get. Like she also loves like Pretty Woman, all that stuff, which is more like there's a class thing in there.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Mother being like, when will a white man lift me from the bonds of poverty? But yeah, like my mom has such a wide interest of movies and cinema. The Bodyguard too. My mom loves The Bodyguard.
Man.
Oof. But yeah, like even I'm always trying to think about like how can I also give that graciousness to the Black women and like older Black women in my life who like also have varied interests, who were like the first time I heard Esperanza Spalding was in my aunt's like cherry red Escalade while she was smoking Black and Milds. Like, like that's my experience of Esperanza Spalding. And I wasn't hearing that with white people. But my aunt loves Esperanza, loves herself some India.Arie, and that really got me into like the neo soul growing up.
Right. Yeah. Like my parents, my relationship with my parents' families are kind of the same. Like my mom's white, so she's playing a whole bunch of other shit that I might not necessarily like. She and her family are playing things that I might not necessarily hear with my dad and his family, and like. But there were also a lot of weird overlaps, because like my mom was really into LL Cool J, like head sprung era LL Cool J, like the early to mid 2000s, like I don't know why, but like she loved that, and like the brief stretch shake remix with Diddy on it, and but then she was also really big on Sting and Aerosmith and like all of that stuff. But and then of course my dad was really into like doo-wop, and he was like he he kind of prides himself on being a little like modern with everything he does. Like at the time he was really big on Destiny's Child and the
Okay.
Brandy's Never Say Never and Eric Benet, but he was also like he's just always tapped in when it comes to that shit, which is really cool. And you know, and like of course like my aunts and uncles also put me onto a whole, and like my cousins too, you know, like I mean like my cousin Jarrell and I used to just like run through all different types of music. He used to get mad at how much I played Doom when I first discovered Doom. Shout out to Jarrell. I'm sure he's still mad about that shit today. But like I would just like play like when I discovered Doom, I would just do nothing. But he'd be like, "Nigga, you playing this shit again?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, bro. Like I can't help it."
I think my favorite thing is like hearing other music writers talk about how they listen to music. Like I'm somebody that's like, I will, if I like a song, I'll run it all day on repeat until I know all the words. But a lot of artists, a lot of writers I know, like will listen to a full album and then just replay it, or like go or they'll like go to the songs that they want to listen to with features, like when they're writing or whatever. But I'm definitely like I'm gonna run this song, like Isaiah Rashad's new song that came out.
Come on.
I probably ran that for a full 24 hours. My partner was like, "We get it." And I was like, "There's a 3 6 Mafia feature like sample on here. I'm running it."
Like, come on.
You can't stop me. But yeah, and also just like how we collect like those stories and nuances. I did want to say, just because I don't want to give my mother too much credit here. My mother does not like Beyonce.
Wow, why?
It's a lot of, misogyny in there. But like my mom had this thing growing up where she was like, Beyonce can't read. And I was like,
Beyonce can't read?
Yeah. It was.
Whoa.
Exactly. It's one of those random conspiracy theories that like, because Beyonce didn't graduate high school, my mom was like, Beyonce can't read. Pure jealousy. But thankfully the internet brought me to Beyonce and I got my common sense about myself. But yeah, I do think it's one of those things where like there are certain artists with my family that I like that weren't played that I had the pleasure of like discovering on my own time once I got a little bit older.
And that's and like that's the beautiful thing about music discovery, because you have the stuff that your parents are playing, but then you go off on your own because my parents weren't playing 3 Inches of Blood. My parents weren't playing 3-6. You know, like my parents weren't playing what else? My parents weren't playing Kanye West at the time. My dad loves Flashing Lights now, which is the funniest thing to me. But you know, like that's kind of looking back on it, that's what fuels our music discovery, everything, right? Like we have that foundation that if our parents are into music, which not everyone's parents are like super like that with it, but like you start there and then you just branch off. And you know, being like me personally, like knocking on the door at 30, like looking back on like the type of music I listen to and the way I think about things, and being like, because like last night I just went on this huge They Might Be Giants kick. I'm not sure if you're like familiar.
Ooh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, good. Like they were the first concert I saw by myself, like without my parents. Like I went with a whole bunch of friends in college. They were touring their album Join Us, and like I got that from, and like I think the first time I heard a They Might Be Giant song was on Tiny Toon Adventures when they played Istanbul Not Constantinople. And like that didn't come from my parents. That came from me just being like, I like this group, let me find out what's going on with them. And then they did a song with the Homestar Runner people, and then I was like, okay, I'm here, I'm all in now. Like so like you go from like They Might Be Giants to Lupe to Trina to 3-6 to fucking like I was really big on Death Clock in high school, like and just like I don't know, music is just super dope, and it's great to see the connection there, you know. Like,
and I will say, like, visibility stuff aside, I really am somebody that still gets as excited about hearing new music and new albums as I don't think you can write about music and not be weird. Like, you gotta be a weirdo. You gotta be sitting in your room listening to shit obsessively and like wanting to hear the samples. Like it's just required for the thing. And that feels
if you want to do it well anyway.
Right. Yeah, you gotta be a little, which is wild because like the pivot to like writer influencer, I'm just like, y'all, I have anxiety. Like, it's just actually not gonna work for me. I can't do it.
Right.
But yeah, that still feels really core to me. And as you were talking about that, it made me think about like a lot of my time on Tumblr merged with some friends I made in high school. There's like two twins. They're both in my library class. Brenda and Carla. I'm gonna send this to them when it comes out. But they put me onto Arctic Monkeys so hard in high school, and it is still like, yeah, Arctic Monkeys is like, it really led me down this rabbit hole of rock that feels really home to me. And it really merged with like the MGM, like Tumblr, Vampire Weekend era that I was already in.
Right.
Like, Horchata was like, that was the jam. So yeah, I'm just thinking about like what happens when you find that discovery again, and just embracing the fact that like a lot of our musical interests are really just like a collage of shit that we gather from other places.
Yeah, and it's important to acknowledge that. And yeah, like since you're bringing up friends, I wanted to bring up my friend Indigo, who put me onto a whole bunch of music in high school as well. Like she put me onto this band Digitalism that oh wait, no, I'm sorry. The band's not called Digitalism. I think I just fucked up. Hang on. Let me see. Shit. I think their album is called Digitalism. No, just kidding. No. I lied. The band is called Digitalism.
Okay.
I fuck but yeah, like, you know, like I was like I feel like it's just always super dope to acknowledge the people who introduced you to things and just like consider how their listening habits affected you, and just like considering like all the different people I was talking to about gorillas at the time. And like she also put me on to like she was the reason I really got into Foo Fighters as well.
Ooh.
She I forget the album. I can see the cover in my head, but just like, you know, like between her and my boy Spencer and my boy Solomon, like just like so many different people played such a huge role in putting me on to all different kinds of music. And like that's like that informs who we are, and it's always important to acknowledge that. So shout out to y'all. I love y'all.
Do you remember Zunes?
Yeah. I never owned a Zune, but I remember Zunes.
Okay. My because I was thinking about, because I think sometimes as writers we kind of get pegged on certain artists that we cover pretty frequently. Like I feel like I've pretty clearly been somebody that's covered Hayley Williams pretty extensively, No Name. But I originally, and I always want to like still do this, is like Earl Sweatshirt.
Yeah, man.
Like that's the core of my stand-up. And I was saying that to say, I was thinking about what I was doing the first time I heard Odd Future, and specifically the first time I heard Earl. And there was just a shift in how I understood rap, because it felt a lot more connected to how I understood like writing. Like it was like inclusive, a little braggadocious, and really on the edge. And yeah, Earl is like always somebody that I still want to go back to. And yeah, he's definitely one of those, like, if he puts out something, I'm gonna listen to it.
Yeah, same. He's a generational talent. I've covered him a lot too. So like that's like he's one of my favorites out right now, and he always will be. I've been waiting for an album forever. But
dude is done locked his hair. Thought he had a kid. He didn't have a kid. Somebody else had a kid. But
no, he did have a kid. He confirmed it. He had a kid.
What?
Yeah.
Things I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, he was tweeting about his son like last week and just said he said something like, nah, like y'all don't like don't come to my son with any weirdo energy. I'm gonna slap hot fire out of whoever. Like he's yeah.
Yeah, Tobe is one of those artists that I remember the first time I heard him and I was like, yeah, this is it for me. Totally. And he also was just so important to like my high school years and early college. I had an internship in Charlotte where I went to his Earl World tour.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, and I think like one of my first clips on Instagram, I met him and I met Taco, and I was, oh my goodness, you couldn't tell me shit. We look like children, like we both look very tiny. But it's yeah, he's definitely one of those artists that I'm like, yeah, I remember where I was when I heard it.
That's incredible. Yeah, man. Wow. Like, yeah, like, like Earl is somebody whose music has really stayed with me over the course of the last decade too. Like like the first mixtape is kind of really hard to listen to in a lot of ways, but like just the talent on display was just like he really just had it, and he still has it. He's just a lot more blunt and direct about what he's doing now. He's not as concerned with like showing you how he can like pull a scheme off. He just
Yeah.
wants to like get these words off and like feel better,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that. Like that's that's the kind of growth I can really get behind.
Mhm.
Like that's good growth, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as I got older, I the breaking apart of Odd Future made more sense to me. And I think
Yeah.
also having been somebody who was like in a toxic friend group and then it splintered, it makes so much more sense now,
Oh
right?
wow, yeah.
Like you have to outgrow people, and like the things that stick, right? Like Earl's connection with Sid sticks, right?
Yeah.
But not every relationship has to sustain itself. And also like I remember when they broke up, there was always these like um what happened? Was there this? And now that I'm older, I'm just like, this was inevitable, right? Like we don't get Sid and the internet without this splintering. Um, and if somebody was like, would you rather have Odd Future stick around or have these amazing artists covering every genre? Like I wouldn't ask for anything different, especially because it's what they needed as kids that needed to grow their own relationships in their own fucking time, you know?
Right. Yeah, because like the internet specifically, like they had started when Odd Future was still a thing, but like I don't know that we would have gotten Hive Mind if they were in the same place they were when they made Purple Naked Ladies. We wouldn't have
Right.
gotten Feel Good. We wouldn't have gotten Ego Death or Hive Mind or any of the solo projects. Like, like they needed to move on. Everybody did. Like Tyler, like I don't know if we would have gotten Call Me If You Get Lost if they were still together. We wouldn't have gotten Haji's solo album that no one talks about, Fireplace, which is amazing. No
Yeah.
one talks about that album.
Yeah.
Um, and we wouldn't have gotten like like Damo deserves more respect, but we wouldn't have gotten all the great music he's made. Like they all needed to move on, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like maybe at some point they're gonna come together again and give us like a reunion tour. Maybe I don't know, but like they like sometimes we just need to separate and go find ourselves before
Literally.
we can just like yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I even
Yes.
think about like how critical Frank was to like songwriting in that era. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure I know all the words to Oldie, like every verse. I remember where I was when I heard Oldie for the first time, but
Same.
yeah, like Frank's legacy of just what he does is impossible with him staying in that pocket. And he was much older than everybody, more established at that time. He was really like, hey, this is what a deal looks like. This is what y'all need to be doing. But
Right.
yeah,
And he had already been writing songs for people. Like I think he had written for Neale and Beyonce at that point, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So he was definitely like on his way out. But yeah, Odd Future is definitely one of those groups where I'm like, I'm really glad y'all did not listen to the advice of the internet. I'm really glad y'all did what y'all needed to do.
Yeah, and I'm really glad they like grew up in a lot of those ways because like like to hear Tyler on Call Me If You Get Lost say like, oh, like I don't even like using the word bitch. It's like he wouldn't have said that, and like the kid who made Yonkers wouldn't have said that.
Right. And
Like
it's also wild because I think about how little coverage Sid got in the group. Like
mm-hmm.
she was really just like the DJ. Like, and even in like the Nardwar videos, like she doesn't talk. She's, I mean, deeply reclusive, deeply extroverted, very similar to
Right.
Earl. Like they were like pretty against media.
Right.
And they still are in a lot of ways. But I mean, to think that that type of genius from Sid was always there.
Yeah, because like she was engineering a lot of that music. Like she wasn't just like she was doing so much behind the scenes, and she just like didn't. Like I don't know if she didn't want to put it out there, but she just like wasn't. Like it's like you said, she wasn't doing like a bunch of media,
Yeah.
and like what media she was doing was her having to field being a queer woman running
Yeah.
with people who were perceived to be homophobes. Like it was always the same questions of like, how does it feel to be the like, like
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's always I mean, something that happens in queer community often is like, I'm sure internally they were having conversations about the fact that Tyler was bisexual, that Steve Lacey's bi. Like
Oh,
These
I
are also
bet.
that there are probably, and I think my favorite thing about Oldie is like Frank says that he's bi in the verse. And you see Earl and Tyler both be like, you know what this is about. But yeah, but you also have them being very publicly homophobic, and how that is all a very like clear defense mechanism. So yeah, I think about that often of like when you're the out person in the group and everybody else isn't, then you become the focal point of like, how do you feel about this? Whereas internally you're like, these niggas are not straight, but sure, let's let's go with that.
Right. Yeah, and then like when like especially man, we're really going off on a whole tangent about Hot Future right now. And then the whole Flower Boy thing, like when
Yeah.
like when Tyler officially came out, like people didn't believe it. And it's because and like a lot of that has to do with like Tyler's whole persona at that point, just like being like the he was always on in that way where you like people had a hard time telling
Yeah.
like like it's two things. There are people who could never tell what was real and what wasn't, and then there are people who were just in like severe denial about the fact that this guy they like was gay, like or bisexual. Like it's like it was a lot to unpack for a lot of people, but to see it but like to see Tyler kind of come into his own and stop to see him come into his own and stop feeling the need to like shock people with
Mhm.
that shit. Like it's like just seeing his evolution has been pretty wild. It's been kind of controversial and weird and strange, but it's like the kid who made Bastard is not the same guy who made Call Me If You Get Lost. Like
Yeah.
if you told me when Bastard first came out that he would make an album like Igor, I'd be like, whoa, what? Like it would make
Yeah.
some kind of sense, but not to the point where I'd be like, yeah, I completely buy that.
Yeah.
Like, because like you can see the small parts. Like you can see some of that Bastard era in there, but not a lot of it, like and it's really just in terms of the music. But anyway, I'm like I could sit here and talk about OF all day, and clearly you can too. So like, shout out to Earl because Earl's the best.
Yeah. Always. He could sneeze on a track and I'd listen to it.
Honestly, yeah. People were too hard on East. I like East. The beat is fine. Y'all need to relax. It's cool.
Yeah.
Before we move on to this section where I wanted to ask you about a handful of your pieces, I feel like you kind of touched on this earlier, but how often, how often does your work as a community organizer inform the work you do as a writer, and vice versa? Because I feel like that's a pretty interesting relationship.
Yeah. I'd say it just depends on what I'm writing about. Um, Honestly, like sometimes I put on different hats, sometimes I'm wearing the same one, sometimes they're different. So like honestly, when I'm doing like music coverage, I really just am using the political analysis I have as an organizer to help me better understand music, and put it in context most often. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that is something that with music, it's easy to get a fluffy feature piece, it's easy to get a fluffy review, but that political context is something I've always admired in like some of my favorite music writers. So um, it lends me well to have that political education for that. Um, for more like hard hitting news stories, that analysis is still needed. I do have to really check where I end and the story begins. So I saw that a lot with the Alexis Crawford piece, just because I was in school at the same time as her. So I saw her on campus. And also, I wanted to just report the piece properly. So I think often I am really finding a clear, like a balancing act between them both, but more often than not, I'm really just using certain skills from one part and putting it into another. So, like, the use of language and sentence structure that comes with music writing is so beneficial to reporting, because reporting can be so just bland and boring. So it's kind of a back and forth most times.
Definitely, yeah. Like I feel like all the best writing, regardless of whether it's reporting or
Mhm.
criticism or an op-ed, like that balance really brings out the best in anything that any of us do. Because I mean, forget the fact that forget the fact of wanting to attract like as many people to your shit as you want. It's just like, it just makes for better writing if you can like be personable, but also kind of like hold it down like formally. And that's something that I feel like every writer, regardless of where they are, like really struggles with, or like not struggles with, but like grapples with, you know, like it's just kind of part of the job. So
I also feel like there was a point when I was doing a lot of op-eds and I started to catch myself in this like identity coverage that I didn't really enjoy that much. And it's something that like is bread and butter for a lot of writers and journalists who are like, this is my identity. I'm writing an op-ed on why I think this is bad. And op-ed writing is cool and I don't doubt it, but one, the visibility shit will really eat that up. And two, that type of identity writing didn't feel as one, it's hard to take that type of op-ed writing into investigative reporting. Like people just, when they look at your clips and they see that you've written all op-eds, it's hard for them to take you seriously as an investigative reporter, which is bullshit. But it was also something where I just wanted to know this skill of how to report without my identity involved. And really just like, what analysis do I have that can better this reporting? And yeah, I also just saw how quickly a lot of folks who did a lot of identity writing were like, you know, really getting castigated for it. We're really like becoming the thing to be consumed. Right. And which is a point where I was like, I'm not built for that. I'm not built for that type of world.
Yeah, it gets to be a lot after a while, and like you want to be, and you know, like you want to be able to write about and cover other things without needing to be like the Black voice on blank, or the queer voice on blank, or the female voice on blank. You know, like that's that's part of the reason why I'm happy I moved in the direction that I have too, because there was a time where I was like really in that zone, and I was like, I don't need to have an opinion on this stuff right now. Like there are other people who could cover this better than I can, and I'm gonna just stick to like fitting game and anime quotes in Pitchfork reviews. You know, like that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't need my opinion on everything to be heard. And also like there's also just this very intense like essayist to book pipeline that like becomes like you put out a book of your own essays on your opinions, and like,
yeah,
I don't want that either.
I feel you.
Yeah, I don't want my entire work to be centered on me and what I think of the world without, taking the time to like shut up and listen and write about other things.
Totally. Yeah. Nah. So, you know, speaking of all of that, I wanted to talk to you about a handful of pieces that you've written over the course of your career that I really connected with. And I feel like a great place to start is your piece on the 2017 XXL freshman cover, especially considering that the new one just dropped. I feel like that moment, I feel like that 2017 moment was kind of like a watershed moment for a lot of us when it came to the freshman list, because of like, it almost feels like that was the point where people started caring less about it. Like I would say either that year or the year that Uzi, 21 and all of them, like those 2 years were like, okay, things are starting to change for what this means. So talk to me about like the headspace you were in when you wrote that piece, and like what really inspired you to go in on it like that.
Yeah. Oof. I'm trying to remember where I was in the world. Oh yeah. So I had just moved to Atlanta by myself, 2017. That was also the year that Control came out.
Yep.
And really, when I tell you, I really got into my bag around covering women in hip hop with Control, because I feel like you remember, like there was this thread going around of women that wrote on Control. It was like me. I don't think I wrote on Control. I'm not remembering. I think I did. Oof, time. But like Donna wrote on it. Another person at DJBooth wrote on it. But there was this really great list of folks that wrote on that album that I was like, that's where I'm trying to be. But when I wrote on this XXL cover, I was more or less coming from a place of, one, really a lot of identity about like what was going on in the world in hip hop, and also feeling like something that felt really critical to me growing up was losing its grip. And not really knowing how to say that. And I'm looking at it because I literally have not read it in a long time. But yeah, I end it being like, why isn't Princess Noki on here? No Name, Mick Jenkins. And I realize now that those artists would never be on this XXL cover, just because you have to be a certain type of industry artist to be on this list ever.
Right.
And Princess Noki is becoming that, but No Name and Mick would never,
no,
like, even say yes to this.
It's
yeah,
also sorry. You finish.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it's also just a list that comes with a certain set of expectations about the artist you want to be. And yeah, I feel like there are certain bot accounts that are actually dedicated to saying like, how often does XXL get this right? It's not a great shooting average, right? Like, I'm thinking it's like maybe they're really half and half on artists that make it and artists that don't. And the ones that don't are like really ones that disappear.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm thinking about like Hobson, OJ the Juice Man. Like, there have been some real falters that at the time felt like the edgy choice.
Right.
And yeah, I think that was just a piece where I was like, I don't know what to do with this institution that I think is falling apart. And yeah, I don't think it gets any better year by year.
and like first of all, it's crazy you bring them two up, because I always liked OJ the Juice Man more than I liked Hobson. Like, Hobson was always garbage to me. I never really fucked the movement at all. Like, it really felt like everything, like Hobson to me was like what everyone who hated OF at the time thought OF was. Like, he is basically that. Yeah. And like, it's just sad because both he and Juice Man have kind of like the last time I heard people talk about Juice Man was when that clip of from Hip Hop Uncovered with his manager like went around. But then before that, it was when his song was featured in Atlanta, and like nobody really talks about Juice Man like that anymore. Yeah. And it's also worth noting that a lot of artists turned down the freshman list too. Yeah. Like Tyler and Earl both turned down the freshman list. There's a bunch of others too, but like they're the two I always remember. Like, yeah,
because it says something about the artist you want to be. Yeah. And I think Who Says Yes, tells us something. But I think, yeah, if we could get that list of no's, I've always been like, I think my very selfish thing is like, I have a few artists that I still wish could have made it. Like, Cardi's never been on the XXL list. I want a Young M.A. on the XXL list so bad.
Same. I'm so surprised she wasn't on that shit.
I feel like somebody knows. I feel like she said no before.
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. So people who've denied the list, Drake denied the list, Rocky denied the list, Nicki Minaj denied the list, McConan, Post Malone, a lot of people. Like
Malone.
Yeah, there's some people on here that are surprising, but
yeah, I was gonna say, if somebody, I would think Post would take it, but if his team was like, we're bigger than this list, then yeah,
right,
that's not wrong.
and yeah, before we move on, like, like looking at the fact that the 2021 list is still like kind of chugging right now. Yeah. Like, it's been 4 years since this piece. Like, how do you like where do you feel? Like, do you feel the same way you did do you feel the same way you did now that you did in 2017? Basically.
Yeah, I think I feel differently. I'm not as invested in the XXL list as I was in 2017. Like, in 2017, I was like, I was like trying to express my frustration with why I felt like the list wasn't doing what it needed to do. Now it's just not the center of my world. Like, when it comes out, it like causes a little ruffle and then it disappears. But I think if anything now, I'm always like, I see the list, I'll wait till the freestyles come out to like make a decision. And that normally tells me what I need to know about like certain artists. Like, yeah, a lot of people were upset that like Ruby Rose was on the list. Ruby Rose has been rapping for a minute. Mm-hmm. Like, she started out as a video girl, but she's been rapping for a minute. Lakia, a 20-year-old. I think she went to
Oh,
Montana.
shout out to Lakia, bro.
Oh my
She's
gosh.
amazing, son. Wow.
Um, and my friend who I went to school with, Sean P, he produced 3 songs on her album. So I have like a personal connection because I heard him make his like producer tag in college, and now I hear it on her album. So I'm like,
that's incredible. Wow. Shout out to him.
Sean P is a genius. He also produced 2 songs on City Girls album too. He's like a Miami legend.
Out here, son.
Yeah, but like I'm always more invested in the women on the list than everybody else. I listen to 42 Doug, and 2C and Push Ice D, so that was there. But yeah, if anything, I'm just like passively checking it out, and it's not. I don't have strong feelings about it anymore.
Same, and I feel like a lot of people don't. That's why I bring that up. Like people used to get like angry about it, and now it happens, and people kind of talk about it a little bit, and then it just goes, which is kind of a shame because they've been getting better about getting artists who are like not already mega superstars, and that was a problem for a couple of years, and now they're kind of work like like Moray was on it, and like and like he's big, but he's not like a superstar yet. Really? He will be, but like he's being like people like him and Lakia and Pooh Shiesty are like really good examples of artists who like had big moments but haven't crossed over to like Drake status or Kendrick status or Cole status. Like there's an awareness there that like it just kind of feels like it's too little too late to me. And that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. So another piece I wanted to talk about is the piece you wrote about why Black student organizers are the future and the present and the past, because I think acknowledging that history is incredibly important, especially for people who have no context about why Black organizers and Black protesters are in the streets doing what they do. So talk to me about putting that piece together.
Yeah. Also from a really long time ago. I think the reason why I wrote that piece was, one, because on campus, I was seeing Black students who weren't organizers and who were really leading the conversation of like what they need and also like what their communities need, that I, again, just wasn't seeing in coverage, which was really frustrating. And it's kind of easy to like knock off college organizers as like, y'all are just students. But I will say the one time I won't give a compliment to Spelman and Morehouse is it really nurtures you to sit and have conversation with other Black folks about the state of the world and like argue about it. Some of my like favorite moments where we had a political conversation on Brown Street, which is like right in the middle of Morehouse's campus, the day after Trump was elected. Yeah, it was a rough one, but it was probably one of my favorite moments on campus of really getting into the weeds with people about like, what are the next 4 years going to look like for Black people? And a lot of the things we mentioned in that conversation ended up coming to pass. And it was a lot of Black folks, Black cis men particularly, being like, you don't know, this is why we need to vote. And a lot of us as organizers, and I'll say hot-headed on both sides, were really just like going back and forth on like, would the material conditions of Black people change if they voted? Because we've done that, right? And like people are still getting evicted. People are still going without food and childcare. So yeah, what is voting doing for the system, and how is it not doing anything for us? And I still really stand by those arguments. Maybe not like, me trying to fight multiple niggas on campus probably wasn't right. But those niggas deserve it. I still hate them. But yeah, probably not going about it in that way politically. But yeah, that piece was really nurtured from how can I map and make clear the fact that some of the sharpest analysis I'm getting, one, is from my own family, but also from people I'm in school with who are looking at the world with very strong criticism and whose voices need to be heard.
Right. And that's so important, especially considering that there's so many different ways to act for change. Like people always love to throw voting out there as the one big one, and like it's one part of a big arsenal, and B, it's a part of a Swiss Army knife that's like it's not even the biggest part. B, you got to vote local more than anything, because that's really what that's really what's going to affect you if you're going to do it. You know, like, I can't even blame people who aren't going to vote anymore at this point. But like, you know, like, there's just so much other shit to do and so many other ways to get active and so many other ways to make noise, you know, like, and yeah, I think I just really think that you brought all of that to attention in a really, like, I remember when that piece came out and I read it and I was like, damn, like, there weren't very many people on platforms talking about things like that in the way you did. And I really appreciated that. So yeah, of course. And then moving on a bit more to something else that's kind of, well, actually, no, it isn't in the same vein at all. It's I wanted to talk about your piece on No Name and the policing of Black women in music. The one you wrote for DJBooth, which is
Oh
like,
my goodness.
yeah, like, yeah, like, especially considering that you went from the B- for telephone to, you know, like, you know, like, so yeah, like, talk to me about, like, that was a really big moment in her career and
Mhm.
really just like the conversation around like Black women in rap in general. So talk to me about that moment and what was going on with you there.
Yeah. 2019, a rough one.
Might as well have been 10 years ago, son.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I think it was a rough one for me personally. Politically, a lot was going on. And I also kind of have this feeling kind of coming out of 2020 that 2019 was like my year of, I was like ignoring all the signs that things in my personal life were going bad. And then 2020 came and it was like, well, Clarissa, you've no choice but to face them now.
Right.
But this piece is important because it was on the heels of me talking about 20. Oh yeah. On the heels of December of 2019, and I had like been publicly doxxed by Sean King top of 2019. So it was like coming up on a year of that, and also me sitting with like a year of going from like a person talking about shit on the internet with 5,000 followers to by the end of 2019 being at like 30,000.
Yeah.
And like, I just was really struggling to understand that visibility. And I still do, because it's still something that like, I think I don't talk about publicly very much, but like that visibility from going from 5K to like 30,000 rattled my personal life.
I'm sure
Like,
it did.
I
Like,
could not have relationships, friendships, romantic relationships without it coming up. I lost a job over it. Like, yeah, it really actually destroyed my life. And this piece was critical to me, one, understanding what I owed myself as a Black woman, and what I could fight for. And I think with this piece, I'm talking about going to a No Name show where basically it was actually the night of getting doxxed because I had already bought the ticket. And my partner was like, you know, I was like, I literally can't get out of this bed because I'm shaking, because I couldn't use my phone because like I was getting death threats. But I was like, I'm gonna go to the show because I was like, I need to do something that is not about this. And I saw Yo at that show, of course. And Yo was like, as soon as I saw this dude in the corner, he was like, Clarissa, what is going on? And this is Yo's general, and because Yo is such a chill person, like he really does not understand visibility. He understands it, but like he has never been on the bad side of it when you're a Black woman who like has to face the brunt of the world telling you that you should really die. And he was just like, what the fuck is going on? What do you need from me? And I will say Yo has been like someone in my camp who was always like, I don't care what's happening. What do you need? Right? Like really like, what do you need from me? How can I show up and protect you? And so we stayed at the show, and there was a part where all the white people that show up for these shows was like, do this song. And Fatima was just like, no, I'm not doing that. This is my show. Right. I have a set list. I'm clearly drinking some Hennessy. No, I'm not doing that song. And it was a very small thing, but it was like so critical to me understanding that like I deserved boundaries. That me as a Black woman could say no to people and could really be like, fuck you. I don't have to do what you want me to do. And so, yeah, this I'm forgetting when Song 31 came out. Gosh, there's so many different ones. But yeah, I go a little bit into Solange, talk about Taylor Crumpton's coverage of concerts and stuff. But I will say my favorite part about this was actually Donna's editing of this. Right? Like Donna really got in this piece and really works the magic. Because I was like also like DMing Donna like, I'm really frazzled, right? Because I wrote this piece and I put so much on myself about it. I was like, I don't know if this is good, but I've sent you 1,200 words. You do what you must from there.
Right.
And so, yeah, Donna crafted it into some magic, which I really appreciate because her editing is like top tier. But
totally.
Yeah, and then to get that response from No Name about it felt really good. I didn't have like a personal relationship with her at that point, and it was before the book club started.
Right. Yeah, this was like right before the book club started. Wow, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, right before. And then I did the Atlanta first book club here in the city. But yeah, it was like it was definitely that time where I was like, okay, how can I hold it was definitely the first piece where I was like, okay, I can hold this visibility at bay when I can control what I put out. And that felt really important to me to like see that piece do well and to also see folks be like, there's an analysis that we haven't gotten from other pieces. And I really appreciated that feedback.
Right. Yeah, that was such a time for you, for the industry, for No Name, for everyone. And like that was really, yeah, like like I can totally understand you feeling the need to like show and prove to yourself more than to anyone, because there was just like that was, yeah, wow. It really feels like it was so long ago, but that shit was only 2 years ago. Like so much has happened in the last 2 years, but that was you really did that. Like the piece came out, the piece came out great, and like now you're where you're at, and Fatima is where she's at, and that's really tight.
Yeah. And I think the biggest part of that is like, one, really letting time do its thing, like really letting time heal you on the time you need to be at, and also like taking autonomy over your life, regardless if people like it, is like probably one of the scariest parts of being a Black woman on the internet.
Yeah. Wow, I can only imagine, and I think that's a perfect segue into into one of the latest things you just dropped, which is the piece about Phylicia Rashad and Bill Cosby, with everything that happened with Cosby and her being a dean at Howard. Like, so like this this only happened like not even 2-3 weeks ago. So like so like how did that come together, and like what really, like, considering your kind of iffy relationship with writing in general, like now, like what drove you to be like, I gotta write about this?
Yeah, I mean, I have like a dream list of publications that I've always wanted to write for. The Cut absolutely is one of those.
They do great work over there, for real.
Yeah, Lindsay Peoples Wagner is out of this world, like out of this world. The fact that she emailed me is like, when I got the email on my phone, I was like, I was really trying, but I've been trying to write for The Cut for a minute. There were a few things I've pitched that I wasn't able to finish, or it got out of the news cycle. I originally was supposed to write a piece about Sean King for The Cut, and I just emailed the editor and was just like, yeah, this shit is actually still too raw for me. Because there's only so many times you can like publicly go up against your abuser, and as I've gotten further away from it, I'm just like, I just have, I want to maintain that peace in my life. But this felt really close to home, because something that has been really crucial to me and something that I'm still working on is working on a book about sexual violence at HBCUs. So this felt perfect to like get into that. And also going to Spelman, there's a building called the Cosby Building, named after his wife, but under the $20 million he gave Spelman. So I felt like I had all the connecting points to really talk about this, and to also really talk about the reality of HBCUs. I think especially after 2020, we've seen a huge increase in students applying to HBCUs. And I don't think I'm trying to like kill those dreams, but I think it's it would be an untruth if I didn't tell Black people that these institutions are not perfect.
Right.
You know, like nowhere we go is not going to have anti-Black violence or anti-Black state violence. So that is really what this piece is about. And also really what I'm hoping the book is about is to be honest with folks that like the only way to get rid of places that put us in harm's way is to dismantle things that are founded on white supremacy, right? That are founded on beliefs and systems that are meant to like exploit and harm us. And that means like, yeah, really thinking critically about things that we love deeply, the Cosby legacy, HBCUs, because those things are also still benefiting from our silence and our exploitation.
Totally. And I feel like the Cosby legacy is, like, I don't want to say it's been ruined, but it's just in a much different place now than it was 10 years ago. Like, even when people were like, it was kind of like an open secret, people would joke about what he did. And then, and then the Hannibal Buress thing happened, and it like really, really got kicked into overdrive. And like, these are just important things to consider, like, regardless of where you want to go with it. Like, especially if you want to go to a HBCU. Like, it's like, these are just things that we have to think about. And that's like, that's part of the reason why I feel like, because like, this isn't even necessarily a piece of criticism. It's more just like you just like writing about it and kind of putting things into context. Like, like, I feel like when it comes, like, whether it's criticism or something like this, I feel like what gets lost in translation a lot is that people are like, oh, like, you talking about this in this way means that you're condemning this thing. And that's not necessary, and that's not always the case. Sometimes it is, but like, like, especially for things we love, you have to be willing to acknowledge the things that are wrong with it, like, regardless of how big or small they may be. And I think this piece does that extremely well, because, like, Phylicia Rashad was wilding, like, straight up, like.
Yeah. And also, I think the funniest part about that is, even though Howard put out a statement and separated themselves from her, politically, she still works there. And also, Howard is the HBCU with some of the worst Title IX violations.
Like, exactly. And you go into that a bit too. Like, yeah, totally.
So it's just funny that they will put out a statement talking about they prioritize survivors, when like numbers of people that have multiple cases of sexual violence on their campus graduated with no problem. And this is something that, happens at every HBCU, maybe a little bit less at smaller ones, which is what I'm hoping to get into the book about more, is like the difference between the different types of HBCUs. But having gone to Spelman and Morehouse, like, I can name more people who've assaulted people that have graduated with no issue than survivors graduated. I know many more survivors at Spelman and Morehouse that dropped out, if anything else. Right. And that type of dichotomy feels like something that, one, shouldn't be happening. Like, there should just be resources for folks to get through school. And also, we see it intercommunally in Black communities all the time, right? Like, we make really clear decisions on who we show up for and who we don't. And I think, as somebody who grew up in the family I did, most oftentimes those aren't Black women, those aren't Black queer people, those aren't Black trans people. And yeah, if my little piece of writing can get folks closer to seeing that, then that feels important to me. And I think very, like, terrifyingly enough about this piece is that when you write about sexual violence, there's this flood of people that start telling you their stories. And that's always the thing I have to brace myself for. And I really am thankful to Know Your Nine, which was the organization I was a part of as a student, that prepared me for that. Like, they give you trainings on, like, when people report, you have to, like, emotionally prepare yourself for that and separate yourself, because thinking about all that is just too much. And that is the brunt of being a journalist, being an organizer, that are very similar in the same, of holding all of these people's stories. It's just too much of a weight, right? Like, you can't expect your piece to, like, solve the issues of the world, and you just have to be really clear and concrete about what it needs to do. Because if you think of all of it, I would never turn in copy.
Yeah, right. Your brain's just gonna explode. Like, that's such a delicate balance that I don't like. I can't fully imagine it, but, like, man, it's just like, yeah, like, especially it just. Man.
It's too much. That's what I'm saying. 2021, it's no analysis, just vibes.
Yeah, no analysis, just vibes.
Tired of thinking. It all hurts.
And see, and like to bring this all full circle, of course, you interview the golden boy Mavi for Rolling Stone, which is just like, first off, shout out to Mavi.
My
That's
goodness.
my guy. He's incredible. He's been incredible, and I'm so happy that A, that he got this look, and B, that it was you to do it, considering that you're both from the Carolinas. So
Yeah.
like, so talk to me about, yeah, so like this is the last one. So like talk to me about the Mavi piece, and like working with him, and just like what it means for you two to be, for you two as Carolinians to be on the platform you are on with that.
Yeah. I will say part of this is actually inspired by you and Yo, because I feel like I learned about Yo's music when I was in Charlotte,
You learned
but
about Mavi's music, you mean?
yeah, sorry, about
That
Bobby's
was
music.
cool.
If Yo has music, oh my gosh, that would be
Fun.
hilarious.
Yeah,
Um,
that'd be too much.
look, keeping this from us, but I really saw y'all's coverage of Mavi's music through DJBooth. That really got me interested in him, and really started to listen to Let the Sun Talk within the past couple of years. I feel like I DM'd you at some point, and I was like, was it you or Yo? I think it was Yo, but I was like,
Yeah.
one of y'all. I was like, I'm gonna get this Mavi interview, and I think it was maybe 2 years ago, and I DM'd Mavi, and I was like, I'm gonna get an interview. I don't know where, but it's gonna happen. Um, and then I had DM'd Jeffy Haza about writing for them on a fluke because I like to be risky. And he replied, and I was like, damn it, now I gotta do it. Per usual, that I did the good fuck. But that piece felt so important. One, because there's so many, like, the world is just too small, right? Like, me and Mavi are both from Charlotte, both Libras, both go dumb hard for Bojangles. And the beauty of the interview was that we realized we grew up in different parts of the city, but at the same time, and even like my coverage of Ivy Soul, who's also from Charlotte, we realized we actually went to Myers Park, I think maybe the same year at some point.
Wow.
Yeah. We're not quite sure if we were like, but we were on campus at the same time at some point in Charlotte, and didn't know. And then I also realized that, Mavi's friend groups were also like, Mavi went to Philip O'Berry. All of my family lives on the west side of Charlotte. So yeah, like there were actually just too many connections for all of us. And Mavi's music is just good, right? And he does a type of storytelling that really resonates with me. Also, kind of being like a kid of the like Earl legacy. It was an easy decision to interview him. I will say, talking to him in the interview was fun, just because he's just too smart. He's just too smart. He's definitely one of those, like, by the time we ended the call, I was like, wow, one, Mavi is like so optimistic about the world. And he definitely feels like a spirit that was put on this earth to tell stories, and also to just think deeply about who he is as a person. And it just felt really aligned to interview him. Yeah, I'm really proud of it as somebody from Charlotte. And also, I think something that I'm thinking about a bit more, thinking about like Christina Lee and Regina Bradley, is like, there are a lot of Southern cities that just don't have hip hop archives.
Right.
And that's something that gets lost a lot. And I tried to illuminate that in the piece, is that like, Charlotte is not the city in North Carolina that you go to for hip hop, right? It's Fayetteville, it's Greensboro, it's Raleigh, because those are places that have, one, really large art centers, really large young communities. Greensboro has a bunch of colleges, but Charlotte is like a corporate conservative city. And Charlotte has a really long like legacy of policing. And me and Mavi talked about this a little bit, of the artists that were coming up when we were in Charlotte were De Niro and Baby. And
Right.
they were both getting run out of venues all the time in Charlotte. Like, I've been to my favorite show is a De Niro show where he's like in front of like a bunch of white folks and his family's there, and his family hops on stage and like does this whole like set with him. But
Wow.
yeah, like De Niro and Baby were over police in Charlotte, and they weren't even as popping as they are now. So it is just hard. Charlotte really does a good job of deciding what type of artists it wants in the city, and it's never rappers. Mm-hmm. Never rappers that talk about the reality of the city. It's painters, it's people who do murals, right? All the gentrification shit. But me and Mavi really rapped about like, what does it mean to be from Charlotte, and what does it mean to like build that archive? And so that piece felt like a first stepping stone to doing that. Because yeah, there's just a lot of cities like that don't have that. Like Memphis is growing theirs with 3-6. I'm hoping to do that in Charlotte. I know Taylor's doing that in Dallas, but yeah, it's just hard to really make sure your city doesn't forget that there's always been hip hop here, especially in places that have really done its best to like wipe that history.
Totally. Like, yeah, that's just really important considering the fact that hip hop continues getting older and is still not shown a lot of respect in the same way that other genres at this point in their lifespans have been. Like, you even see it in places like New York with like all the drill artists, like, and like not even just drill artists, like pretty much like anybody who doesn't like cross over into some sort of superstar shit faces some sort of opposition from the hip hop police out here. Yeah. Like even considering everything that happened at Rolling Loud before Pop Smoke passed away, like it's just, like you can just tell that most places are geared against rappers in some way, shape, or form. And that really bums me out. Like, like it bums me out to consider that Pop Smoke didn't even get to play a show in New York before he died. Like, what the fuck kind of shit is that?
Yeah. And I was thinking about that Vice package about hip hop coverage that came out. I think Andre wrote that piece. About yeah. Oh my God. Andre's piece on Chicago drill, top tier. And even like Polo G a few weeks ago, like got arrested in Miami.
Yep.
At his birthday party. And like the fact that we know that these certain cities actually have a registry of artists that they're just gonna lock up as soon as they touch down at an airport, really says that, you can be DaBaby, you can be Migos, you can be all these things, but at the end of the day, like if PD wants to lock you up, they'll do that. And it's part of the reason why DaBaby isn't in Charlotte as much, because CMPD has arrested him at this point like 4 times.
Yeah.
For just hosting charity events. So yeah, it's definitely hard to do that when you're not in a city like LA or New York, where you just don't have the infrastructure to like make sure the hip hop pieces like stay together.
Totally. Yeah. Nah. It's very different for places that don't have that like established archive. I definitely want to make that clear. Like, and yeah, like DaBaby in particular, he's very complicated because he's been all over the place just with like how he acts towards people and how aggressive he can be, and the fact that he's punched multiple women in the face and nobody really seems to give a shit about that. And then everything that happened with the kids and the money yesterday, like he's a meme now. Like all the white kids love him. Like he's the fucking I turn into a convertible and like the fucking weird video. Like he's a meme now. It's so his trajectory over the course of the last like 2 years has been really fucking strange. Like he's a really big star and people love him and he's putting on for North Carolina, but he's like, people also are kind of like tired of him in certain spots too. It's really strange. I'm still trying to process it.
Yeah. And I think like maybe last year I was like, I want like a cover story with him. And then after the violence stuff he's been doing, I was like, maybe not. But I think probably less about him and more just about like how he started out. Like he was really going to radio stations in diapers.
Right. Yeah.
2013. Like
this is when he was Baby Jesus, right?
Yeah. I remember going to his show as Baby Jesus. It was rough. Going to his shows as him, Baby Jesus, it was rough in Charlotte, but he is a man of antics, right? He like is a man who grew up on West Charlotte, where like he is fine with doing whatever he needs to do as long as he knows that he's staying true to what he thinks to be correct. And like, if anything, I think the biggest thing about DaBaby is like, he knows at the end of the day, he can out rap anybody.
Right.
Which can't be denied, but also West Charlotte is not a place of ethics in the way that you need to have to be a hip hop superstar. Right. And I think that type of like geopolitical analysis of like things that like I want to do if I interviewed him, but I also know he reminds me a lot of my cousins. And I'd probably be like, you're getting on my fucking nerves, right? Like he'd probably flirt with me or some shit, and I'd be like, this isn't gonna work for me, right? We're from the same side of town. You're not gonna bullshit me. And yeah, I don't find his antics interesting. I don't find his violence towards women interesting. I see him as an artist that is, you know, very much like an athlete. He knows how to do a skill very well. But am I invested in the glitz and glamour of who his team is making him to be? Not as much, because it doesn't tell me anything about him as an artist or who he is as a person. And I think that's often where I'm like, even the songs he put out recently about his brother passing felt like really a lot of breaks in that character, where I'm like, I'm not getting the antics. I'm getting this piece about how like your brother committed suicide. And I don't even need the trauma, but I do need some like genuine something. And it's hard to get that with him. So I'm hoping he goes more that route of being genuine and being vulnerable, but he's also a cishet nigga from West Charlotte. So I don't know. I don't know if we can get that.
Right. Yeah. And you know, like it's hard to feel like he's in that space when he's, you know, like filming himself giving fucking kids $2 for candy when he's wearing a fucking Balenciaga sweater. And it's like, bro, like, come on. Like this is what?
This is the same dude that worked at Bojangles like 10 years ago. Like, I'm just like,
come on. Like,
you're not fooling me, right? Like, you're not fooling me that you were this like philanthropic person. Like, yeah, I'm interested on like a profile that really not even drags him, but really is honest about like, how do you hold somebody who doesn't deserve to be over policed by CMPD, and also somebody who's caused a lot of harm to Black women.
Right.
And he's a superstar, right? Mm-hmm. With honesty, how do you hold that? And I don't know what that profile would look like. I don't know if I'd be able to write that, because I don't, you know, I'm definitely not someone who could write that piece and have his team be happy with it.
Right, exactly. You know, like when you you saying that reminded me of the piece that Charles, who used to work over at Rolling Stone, shout out to Charles. He profiled Lil Baby, and that piece wasn't 100% positive. He I actually really admired the guts it took for him to really like not turn it into head, you know, like because he really could have, but like there was a lot of shit covered in there about him as an artist, about him as a person. And, you know, like it wasn't like a takedown piece or anything, but it hit that balance that we've been talking about of like talking about him and how his music, how great his music can be, but also kind of talking about giving some criticisms and talking about him as a person and like showing it was a full package type of thing. And I think at this point in his career, considering what's happening with DaBaby, considering how popular he still is, like maybe more than ever, honestly, like regardless of what Twitter wants to tell you, he's still pop. People love DaBaby. So like, I think he deserves some, or deserves might be the right word, but I think we all would benefit from something like that. And I think you could probably do that. If somebody's willing to let you, I think you could do that.
I don't think I've said, I was in a Clubhouse room where I think it's Eric Caldwell or somebody was like, if I hear about a baby cover story, I'm definitely putting your name in for it. And I think I would be able to do it with the understanding from an editor that like, this is gonna be what I experience to be.
Right, of course.
Right. And having that leniency is important, because also like, I feel like people don't know this as much, but like cover stories are not, you know, unbiased things.
Right.
Like there is an investment in a PR stake in an artist being on a cover.
Of course.
Right. And I think a lot of people be like, oh my God, you got a cover. But like a lot of like, you're not getting hard hitting criticism on a cover. You actually can't.
Right. Yeah, not usually, at least.
Yeah,
Like,
not usually. I mean, it depends on if it's like a certain publication, like The Source, XXL used to do that. But
right.
yeah, it's rare nowadays to get a cover that is actually balanced and fair. And yeah, if his team wants a cover and they ask me to do it, I'm not giving you fluff.
Right.
I'm not giving
Nah,
you
we expect nothing less. And I got one more question for you,
yeah.
just about like this whole everything. like like I don't know if there's any way for me to like really bring this entire point together, but like so so at this point in hip hop's life, women and femmes and queer people and non-binary folks they've kind of been like dominating the rap landscape for a
Mhm.
little while. Like that isn't to say that there's more of an acceptance, even though like in some ways there kind of are, but like there's still plenty of opposition, like just to just to people like existing. Like look at like Lil Nas X and everything that's happened with No Name and everything that's happened with just like I could sit here and list names all day, but I'm not gonna do that. So like just to kind of like I just feel like there's still so much progress to be made in terms of representation and general acceptance when it comes to this. So like I guess my last question for you is where do you feel we're at with that,
Mhm.
considering the fact that so many women and so many queer folks are like in this are like at the top of the industry in a way that they necessarily haven't been before, at least in terms of like exposure, and I guess in terms of sales too. But like I don't want to ask you anything too weighty and like put all this on you or anything crazy, but like where do you feel the dynamic is in that sense right now, and like how do you think that we as rap fans can kind of make that better? I know that's like a really heavy loaded question. But
I mean, it's not as heavy or as loaded as the No Name talk. Just because like they were like, give us your top five. We're starting in 5 minutes. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I need time to think about that. I think that question actually like, and we talk about it at the No Name thing too, is like more about like what the industry says it wants to be, right? So like in this current time, I think we are seeing not only women dominating rap, but like leading the best rap that we have currently. And we are still seeing like the industry not show up for them, right? And kind of replicate certain aesthetics that, yeah, aren't always, I don't want to say authentic, but I'm thinking more specifically of like the complaints I hear from, I'll say mostly men, but like it's a wide range of people about hip hop is like all the women rappers look like strippers. All of them talk about the same things, they just shake ass. And I don't think that's actually the fault of the artist. I think that says something about the industry, right? You get one
yeah,
idea of femininity and it just replicates itself on multiple artists in a way that is not authentic to who they are. Like Mulatto did not grow up doing sex work at all.
right.
She grew up very middle class. So to see that imagery of sex work replicated on her is interesting because she did not grow up like that. But I think that says a lot more about the industry and what it sees as top selling currently. So I think in order for like, how do we become better consumers of hip hop? I think we have to think more about like, what type of artistry do we want? And what is the industry selling to me? And I think that shows up more in the patterns of anything, of who's popping and who's not. I was thinking a lot about how like hip hop was not something I was going to in the pandemic.
Mm.
Like I was really actually listening to a lot of R&B. I say pretty often like Kiana Ledé's album. I ran that so much during the pandemic because R&B has just felt more raw and open to vulnerability than hip hop has recently.
Yeah,
Uh,
I get that.
yeah. And I will say, like, I also just wasn't going to it just because, like, emotionally I was going through a lot, and hip hop just wasn't a place I wanted to be at.
Right. Yeah, of
But
course.
yeah, but I think with women in the game and queer folks in the game, I'm always just like, yeah, I have less critique for them unless they're causing harm to people, because there is just so little space for them to be wide ranging. And I think as a consumer, I do think a lot more about like, what artists am I not listening to that I think are making music that resonates more with my, I don't want to say political growth, but like, yeah, I just have different tastes than I did 5 years ago.
Right.
And I just try to be more honest about my consumption than anything else, right? Like if I'm listening to club music, I'm listening to club music. I just want to throw some ass and chill. I don't need it to be like a deep analysis on like third wave feminism. I just like city girls, right? And I think that's a lot more honest than being like, why do all women in rap shake their ass?
Right. Yeah.
That's
And
just
it's
what
just
I'm
like,
listening to today, right?
right. And it's just like, who cares? You know, like if you don't want to hear that, then don't listen to it. I think I think a big part of that also has to do with like what people are listening to, because it's like, oh well, like this is all people are doing. It's like, well, this is what people are listening to. So if you don't want to hear that, go listen to what you want to hear. And like not even in the sense that like, you know, like I don't say that to say that like, oh, like if people don't listen to this and it's going to go away forever. It's just like there is a certain type of music out there for you. And even if it's not being pushed in your face, and like I know like music discovery is really hard, like regardless of how accessible it is today, it's hard. But like,
Yeah.
but like there are women somewhere, like for everybody complaining about what Meg and Cardi B and what like and what like Lotto and the City Girls are doing, like, and it just like stop putting all of that on Rhapsody. Like anybody listening, like stop that. Stop putting all that shit on Rhapsody. Like they're
And we
like
talked about that in the thing. People were like trying to do this like respectability thing where they were like, Missy doesn't talk about this. And they were like,
yeah, and it's like,
I don't think you're listening to Missy correctly.
exactly. Like what? Like how could you listen to Superfly and not hear any of that? Like,
I have no idea. But I mean, that's just more about like fat phobia and colorism than anything.
right,
Like,
absolutely.
when you're like a fat, dark-skinned Black woman, like people are just not seeing you as a sexual being. But
right.
yeah, I also think like when I hear that critique of like all women doing rap and shake ass, I talk about money, I'm just like, yeah, that's a reflection of the industry of what sells. And also it tells me that like, yeah, folks want a binary of like good women in rap and bad women in rap. And that's not the way I'm listening to music. So if that's what folks want to do, that's fine. But like, yeah, that binary of good and bad, one, doesn't serve us in the real world ever. And two, it doesn't serve hip hop because Black women are not, you know, good or bad. They are just telling their stories how they need to. And yeah, and being sexual when they want to, because Chica, No Name are also talking about sex.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
like
they're just not doing it in the aesthetic way that the industry says is the most profitable, but they're still also talking about sex, right?
You know, and yeah, and like that's another thing. Like pretty much every woman in rap, because I'm not, yeah, like pretty much any woman in rap is talking about sex in some way, shape, or form. Rhapsody's talked about sex, you know, like right, like everyone talks about everything, you know, and just like the more we're willing to be accepting of like everyone talking about things the way they feel they need to be talked about, like the easier it's going to be for you to find stuff that you like, first of all, and second of all, you know, like the people you want to see succeed are going to succeed more if you listen to their shit, you know. Like, and just like, who fucking cares? Like, let people talk about what they want to talk about, as long as they're not doing harm to anybody or anything wild. Like, you know, like sometimes we want to hear about shaking ass. Sometimes we want to hear a dissertation, you know, like, but like, it's not always like, we change, things change, and just like, shut up and let them cook. That's all I got. Yo, that's all I got. I don't have any more questions. Clarissa, yo, this was great. Thank you so much. Wow.
Oh my goodness. We went through, I mean, just, I'm sure editing this is going to be a time. We went through so many topics. I was like, damn, I know this is going to be a tough one to do on the back end, but I had such a good time. I really get to talk about TV shows and music. So thank you so much for, asking me about that. And centering that in your work. It's, really critical to the stuff that we do.
Right. Yeah. No, this is important because we all have these experiences, and I appreciate that because, like, I feel like people in our position don't really get the chance to talk about this stuff, and it's like really important to the way that we perceive the world and the way we put our work together, and just the way that like people live their lives. So the fact that you even agreed to come on, like, I really don't take, like, considering how busy you are, I don't take that for granted. So, like, thank you so much. Like, for real, this was.
I'm definitely gonna take this new realization about why women dying in narration to therapy. I'm definitely gonna be like, because as we were talking, I was like, damn. Well, another time.
Thanks for listening. Shout out to y'all for making it this far. And shout out to all the Black people listening too, because y'all really impeccable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come through next time. 1.